In working with a multi-page app, a challenge might be to share data between the pages. There are several ways that can be done, including a class design pattern known as a singleton, binding data, but at this point I want to show you 3 different ways to pass data from one page to another using parameters and public static variables. So I created an app in which the user enters their name in their campus, and they click the submit button, and it takes them to another page, and on that page it shows the information they submitted. Welcome, John Smith from SMCC. So that's the first method in which I'm passing parameters. I'll show you that code in a second. Here's the second one, same information. In this case, I'm referencing the data as a public static object from the source page. And in the third instance, I'm setting a public static object on the target page. Same information. So let's look at the 3 ways to do this. So first of all, here's my XAML code. Nothing out of the ordinary. I've got 3 buttons here that have the events of click submit entries, submit method 2, submit method 3, and then some labels and entry fields where they're entering the data, as you've already seen. The first welcome page, nothing fancy, just has a label on it, and I'm going to change the text of the label programmatically upon entering that page. Now let's take a look at the main page XAML.cs. For our first submit button, we have our event handler for submit entries. I'm getting the 3 values the user entered in the 3 entry fields, txt first name, txt last name, txt campus, setting those to string variables called first name, last name, and campus. And then in an if structure, I'm using a complex Boolean to make sure that none of the 3 are empty, and if it is, I'm going to display an alert that says the data submission is incomplete. However, if everything is good, they've submitted 3 values for those 3 fields, the else fork, we're going to create a object of type student and pass to the constructor of the student class first name, last name, and campus. Well, let's take a look at that class. So in the Solution Explorer, I created a folder for models, and in models I created a new C# class called student.cs. I have 3 properties that are public strings, first name, last name, and campus. And then the constructor simply as I'm passing it 3 strings and setting the first name to the first one, the last name to the second one, and the campus to the third one. So I can reference any instance by the .first name, .last name, .campus. I'm going to go back to my code. So I've created that instance in memory called student, lowercase s, of type student, uppercase s. You can ignore this await statement. I was just doing some testing there. I'm going to call navigation.pushAsync and set a new welcome page. This is an asynchronous method, so I've got await and async up here on the method declaration. But notice that in the parentheses for new page, I'm passing it the value of student. That is an object that contains the first name, the last name, and the campus. Let's take a look at that welcome page. Now in the welcome page CS, when it creates the page, it's going to call the constructor here of welcome page. But notice that in that constructor, I am receiving a student object, and I named it XYZ. I also created a student object above as a class level variable named user. And I only did that in case you wanted to reuse this elsewhere in the page. You want to keep track of that user value, because we're going to take XYZ and assign it to user after we've initialized the components. If you only want to use it this one time, you can get rid of that student user line and get rid of the user.xyz, and then use XYZ here instead of user within the next statement. So the last statement here is we're setting the text of LBL welcome. That's our label. And I'm using a formatted string here of welcome, comma, their first name, a space, their last name, so user.first name, user.last name, a space, the word from, and then the user campus and an exclamation mark. So if I put in values here for first name, last name, and campus on the main page, put Lucy Clark, and we'll say Lucy Clark is from ASU. I'm going to click submit. and I've gone to that welcome page, welcome Lucy Clark from ASU. So Lucy here is the user.firstname, Clark is the user.lastname, and campus is the user.campus. All that coming from XYZ that was passed to it, going into the variable user of type student. Let's take a look at the second one. On my main page CS for submit method 2, I'm doing the same thing as far as making sure that there's valid data there for the first name, last name, and campus. But let's look at the else fork. So student 2 equals a new student, first name, last name, and campus. That's all well. But here I'm saying await navigation push async new welcome page 2. I'm not passing anything in this statement, but rather student 2 I have declared up above as a public static student. So this gives me access to it from another page. And here's that page. It's basically the exact same thing as far as the XAML code from welcome page 1, or my first welcome page. But let's look at the code. So again, I'm initializing the page. Student user equals, in this case, main page.student2. I can reference that student2 variable from the main page because it's a public static variable. And then all I do here is say user.firstname, just as we did before, last name, and campus. If I want to make this a global, I should create student user up here and just have user equals main page.student2. And so once again, on our example, if I click submit to, we get welcome Lucy Clark from ASU. For our third submit button, submit method 3, again, same thing as before, making sure that it's valid data, but here's our else fork. Student equals new student, first name, last name, and campus. And then I'm setting welcome page 3.user equals student. So here I set the static public variable on welcome page 3. XAML code is in essence the same, just changing colors. But in the C#, you'll see there's a public static student user on the welcome page 3. And then again, I'm just setting user.firstname, user.lastname, and user.campus in the LBL welcome label. So when I'm passing that, all I'm doing is I'm setting that user student object on welcome page 3 to the value of student that I've created here. This is going to pull the data from that local page. So I'll put in Pat Brown. Pat Brown will be from Stanford. And again, I'm going to click submit 3, and now I get welcome Pat Brown from Stanford, and it's pulling that data from the local student object of that page after it has been populated by the data passed to it from the main page. 3 different ways: passing data as a parameter, setting a static object on the source page, and setting a static object on the target page. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the .NET MAUI Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.